Carolan Lennon, Country Leader for Salesforce in Ireland. Thanks a million for being in the studio with us today.
Delighted to be here, Anne. Delighted to see you again. And yeah, very happy. Thanks for inviting me.
And look, we always kind of kick off by getting a little bit of a sense of the person behind the leader, you know, the kind of human side. So if you don't mind, can you take us a little bit through your sort of career journey to date and how you got here?
Yeah, so happy to. So I was doing my Leaving Cert in Ireland in the 80s. No transition years in those days. So 17, and didn't know what I wanted to do, I suppose, like most 17-year-olds. Except that I wanted to build a career in Ireland. That was the only thing I knew. And there wasn't very many jobs in Ireland in the 80s, so I reckoned my best chance of getting a job was a degree in IT and maths. And I went to UCD and did that degree. And I did get a job in Ireland, so, I was right about that and ticked that box. And, first job, working here, staying in Ireland, and quite technical roles. And enjoying it, but I would say not super performer in that role. Until I was involved in working on a project that was very customer facing. And then I kind of realized that I was interested in the commercial piece, the business case, the customer piece, who would buy it, why would they buy it? But I had no education. I'd never done accounting. I'd never done any of those things either in university or in school. So I decided if I wanted to make that kind of career move, and in those days people didn't move, you didn't go from technology to marketing or commercial, easily, that I needed to upskill. And I went, much to my parents' horror, left my permanent pensionable job and went back to Trinity and did a full-time MBA. And in general, I would say for me that education has been a game changer. I mean, the first degree, even though maybe the role wasn't right for me afterwards, but just having that and then being able to go back and do the full-time MBA, just raised everything for me. And out of that, I got a commercial role in telecoms. And, if you look, and I ended up then as the first woman to be the CEO of Eir, which is something I'm very proud of. But if you look at my performance and my career trajectory in those years post MBA versus pre MBA, there's I'd say pre MBA it's a C plus on a good day maybe, but certainly we're into the A kind of grading. I just absolutely loved it, and the fit was right. It was a great industry, a lot of growth, and as I said, ended up as a CEO of a role I loved. I loved being the CEO. I loved being the leader because I think I put my hand up and said, I want to be the next CEO of Eir. I sort of put my head above the parapet, and that's advice I give to women because I think women don't do that often. They kind of expect people to know what they want. I think you have to tell them. And then I got it, and I thought, God, I hope I could do it now. There's always that moment, and I really enjoyed it, and I thought I was good at it. And I decided that I wanted to see if I could lead in a different industry and in a different model. And hence, I also had I wanted to go back to a growth industry because telco had been very margin driven in my half of my years in telco, and I wanted it to be new, I wanted it to be growth, and I wanted to challenge my leadership style and see was that transferable. And then I got the opportunity to join Salesforce, and I'll be there kind of 2 years in July, and really enjoying it. I mean, I think the leadership skills are transferable. It took me a while to find my way. The things I thought would be difficult, learning a new industry, wasn't as hard. I still have loads to learn, but that actually wasn't as hard as I expected it to be. But how to lead in a new model in an organization of 75,000 people, that's matrix, that's headquartered out of the US, versus a 3,500 people organization where I'd been there for 12 years and I knew everybody. So that was the challenge. But yeah, really enjoying it. And the other thing I've learned is doing new things is good for your brain. It actually is good to challenge yourself and to think differently and have to get your head around new things. So so really enjoying it now, getting quite settled in.
Inevitably, and I think I've said this to you already, like I remember it struck me at the time what a very, very different from a telco to go from telco to a big growth company like Salesforce. So I'm delighted it's worked so well. In that context, you were talking about there are probably two quite different leadership styles, but if you were to sort of define what you see as really good leadership and maybe the kind of the leader you certainly aspire to be, tell me a bit about that.
Yeah, so I suppose, I believe in values-based leadership. I think you need to know what your values are and be comfortable staying true to them no matter what is going on. Because I actually believe that really good leaders are calm and consistent. Because throughout your career, throughout businesses, there's always good days, but there's always tough days. Things come at you, deals don't get done. There's some shock economically. There's something going on in the world that affects your business and whatever. And I think to be able to look to your leader and see that he or she behaves exactly the same way in the good days and the bad days, I think it gives people great confidence. And the other thing that it does, one of the questions I always ask myself, particularly when it's in tough times, where's the energy in the room going? If the energy in the room is going on solving the problem, helping the customer, or moving us forward, I'm really happy. But if the energy in the room is about whose fault was that, how did that happen? And I think, if you don't bring that consistency and calmness, I think that's where the energy in the room goes. And that doesn't bring the organization forward. And it doesn't give people the opportunity, to be honest, to, in that no blame environment, let's get everything on the table. And if I'm not helping, I'm going to step out of the way. So I think that's, and I think if you talk to people about me, they will tell you that my behavior is exactly the same, and I have enough experience now to know this too will pass, whether it's a good day or a bad day. So that's been really important to me. Actually, one of the reasons I was attracted to Salesforce, on top of the fact that it was a fantastic new industry and a new opportunity to lead in a different way, but I also was quite aligned with their values. All through the interview process, people had talked about the values, and it felt real, because sometimes when companies talk about values, you're not sure if it's a poster on the wall or if it actually is real. But the consistency of the way people talked about them, so comfortably, and particularly, trust, is a huge value for Salesforce, as is equality, and they're personally huge values for me. Like, I trust people straight off the bat. When I meet you, I trust you. If you do something and that changes, then it's a different. But that's where I start, because I think I get the best out of people, with that kind of approach. So that was really important to me. And when I actually joined, I realized actually the values kind of are real, and I think that's really important. I think the other thing for leaders, I think you have an obligation to focus on things like diversity and inclusion, because it matters, it makes a difference. And as you become more senior and you have more control and you have more power, as my kids used to say, are you going to use your power for good or evil today, Mom? I was saying, I'm going to use that's a Spider-Man quote, by the way, I'm going to use it for good. But, you have more power, so you can do more. And, in my early days with the, I really was a big champion of women. When I became the Eir CEO, I was able to change the dynamic around the management team from 90% male, 10% woman, i.e. me, to 50-50. And I think that was hugely, beneficial to the organisation. I'm the exec sponsor of the Women's Network in Salesforce. I've also been involved with Special Olympics for a long time, as you know, and I'm a member of Ability Force in Salesforce. So again, I think, I look to leaders to see, what are they doing? Because I think, for me, it's not optional. I think, and also when I'm interviewing people for roles or whatever, I'm kind of interested in what are you doing outside your job and your job capability, because to me, that's a rounded person. I think we need to be broader. We need to be interested in our world, in our organisation, and so if I don't see that in a leader, I'm not sort of super comfortable with that.
Yeah, it's funny, we were talking about it earlier about that, how maybe one of the positives that came out of the pandemic was that kind of ability to look more at people in the round, whether it was leaders or your team members. So I love that idea of the energy in the room. I hadn't heard that before, and it makes so much sense.
But if you pay attention to that, and you see, what's that dynamic, you'll really see if you have a really aligned team where there's loads of trust and it's all about fixing problems and moving us forward, or it's not. Yeah. And I've created that in teams before, and you really feel it. And I remember putting it out before that this is the way I was going to lead. And I know there were some people around the table that were kind of a bit cynical about, well, we'll see what happens, when there's a crisis, which we knew there would be one. Yeah. And there was a bit of a crisis for us. And I behaved exactly the way I behaved. And the energy in the room all went on fixing the problem. And actually, she said to me afterwards, oh my God, when I saw that, I thought, this is real. And she said, I know I'll have a crisis in my area someday, because that's the world we live in. And to know that I'm going to be supported like that, and the team are going to rally around me and, you know, and put their energy on helping me through that problem, she was like, I'm all in. Yeah. I'm all in. So I think if you demonstrate that with actions, not just words, then you get super buy-in from people and you get the best out of them. And also it's the best for the company because you're not wasting your time on, you know, on some of the negative things that kind of hold us back and don't make us problem solvers or, you know.
100%. I have no time for it. It's one thing that drives me nuts. I love that idea of you know, not doing the blame game. It's just nobody wins, like nobody gains anything. I have to go back to Salesforce, of course. So, I mean, Salesforce is a huge global organization these days, but tell me a little bit about what's exciting at Salesforce at the moment, what's changing globally, and then maybe a little bit about Salesforce in Ireland.
Yeah, so
in the context.
So obviously, Salesforce, a technology company, I think pioneer, in fairness, in CRM, you know, across marketing, sales, service, commerce, and I think, you know, supporting about 200,000 businesses worldwide to get closer to their customer, and all based on a vision of our founder, which I absolutely love the simplicity of it. And remember, this is back in 1999, that the vision was that buying software should be as easy as buying a book from Amazon. You know, that was you know, trailblazing and groundbreaking back in 1999. So usually focused on, you know, supporting our customers on their digital transformation journeys. And, you know, even when I talk to Irish customers, they're all talking about, they know they need to invest because they want to drive growth, or they want to get productivity better, or they want to get closer to their customer, but understanding where they need to drive growth. And I suppose the big innovation for Salesforce worldwide and also in Ireland now is, of course, generative AI. And, you know, and if you look at, you know, from the steam engine to electrification and then to the web and mobile, you know, this is the fourth wave and potentially, you know, the most impactful. So I think this is a huge opportunity for us in Salesforce because we've basically had AI as part of our CRM for the last decade. So, you know, and I think we've also been quite early to recognize that actually generative AI is only as good as the data that you have. So I think Data Cloud just makes everything better. And, you know, and again, we talk to companies and they're saying, well, I want to do this, I want to do that, but I've got this trapped data over there in a database, I've got this over there. Whereas, you know, that's why we're so excited about Data Cloud, because actually that gives you the opportunity to pull all that together. But also with our kind of trust layer, it's protected because again, when we talk to customers about it, they are worried about it, the security of their data, the privacy of their data. So I think, you know, your data is not Salesforce's product, and I think that's a message that we want everyone to know. And we've been thinking about trust at the start of this journey, and we've been doing it for quite a long time. So I think that is kind of hugely important. But like I think AI can, you know, there'll be different roles. You know, you'll have AI data auditors, you'll have AI systems architects. Of course, there'll be some things that, you know, are done by, you know, people today and probably repetitive sort of mundane tasks that will be done by AI, but I think it's the opportunity to transform every business and, you know, and every industry. And we use it all the time in Salesforce today. It's baked into kind of what we do. So that's kind of, I think, super exciting for us and a super accelerator. When you talk about Ireland, I mean, I don't know if everyone knows the Ireland history. So Salesforce has been in Ireland since 2000. And how we got here, I love this story. I wish this was me who did this, but it wasn't. But 3 colleagues working in a different company saw this visionary in the US, you know, and wrote to him and said, why don't you set up your first European hub in Dublin? And believe it or not, he said yes. And actually, one of them retired recently, and he gave me a framed photograph of that original email that he sent as a present, which I love. So that's, you know, how it happened. So, you know, back in 2000, you know, Salesforce started in Ireland and been here ever since. We'll celebrate 25 years next year. We've over 2,700 employees here. We're an EMEA hub. We're centres of excellence for finance, for technology. Many of our sales people start their careers in Dublin from all over EMEA. We're kind of seen as a keeper of culture because, you know, people sort of start here and they really buy into the Salesforce values and the Salesforce vision. I love walking around the office and hearing all those different languages and seeing all those kind of different nationalities. And and we opened our Salesforce Tower. All the Salesforce buildings are called towers, so it's not a super-sized skyscraper. It is Dublin, but we opened it about a year ago. And it's absolutely fabulous. It's been designed differently. I think it's 70% more collaboration space. Came kind of at a post-COVID, the idea that people want to come together to collaborate and, and not just sit in a row of kind of desks. We've got auditoriums, we've got, whole training centres down the bottom, and then we've got 2 Ohana floors, and those Ohana floors are open to not-for-profits at evenings and weekends to use them, because we want to be a good neighbour. We're in the north of the city, and we want to be a good neighbour, and we want to invite our neighbours in. We don't just want to be like a glass box that no one feels they can go into. And I don't know whether you've seen the building, but there's a beautiful red bricked building beside us. And that used to be the British Rail Hotel. So that used to be the last place that people stayed before they took the boat to America. And quite recently we had the British Rail Transport pensioners in to visit the building, because some of them used to actually work in that hotel. And they were so delighted that we'd restored it. And they came in for a tour. And being pensioners, they were half an hour early. So I was running down to meet them. But we had an amazing stories and amazing time. But they were so pleased that the building had been restored. And now we're using it for a wellness centre. There'll be some retail in there. So I really feel like Dublin's our home. We're very committed to it. And I'm very welcoming to all our neighbours and everyone around us to come in and take advantage of our beautiful surroundings.
And coming back to, you were talking about it there, but coming back to your clients and your customers, what are the challenges, I suppose, and what is kind of the advice you give to them at the moment in the current climate? I'm sure some of them are concerned about AI and what it means to them, and haven't really, it's certainly what I'm getting when I'm out talking to people. There's a mix of people who welcome it and others who fear it a little.
Yeah, I suppose what I would say is everyone's talking about it, because I think it's the fear of missing out. Is there something here that I should know about? But again, if I don't feel I understand it, or I don't know kind of where to start. So I suppose what we're talking, so like we would have, so for example, Aer Lingus is a big customer of ours, and we help them, manage all the customer kind of comms that are coming in. Brown Thomas, we have an integrated commerce platform for them, but we have AI built into those platforms. So that's a very nice way for them to kind of, to participate and kind of work out some of those use cases. So I think people are worried about where to start. I think then you say, well, you start with the data. What shape is your data in, and, and how do you manage that? So I think then the data conversation leads to some of the conversations about security, data protection, trust, or whatever. So I think you start off with your data strategy, and I think that's what we're recommending to customers. Let's get the data strategy right, and obviously we have Data Cloud there. Let's get the data strategy right, and then what are the most important use cases for you that sit on top of that data strategy? We do have a trust. I mean, I do believe that people will buy AI solutions from companies they can trust. And but what I do think is nice this time, like if you think about social media, we never had the risk conversations at the time. Maybe we didn't think about them, or we weren't aware of them. So I do think the good thing about AI is that we're having the conversations at the time, and that generally people seem to be happy to cooperate globally about getting it right and taking an appropriate, risk-based approach to kind of using it. So I do think that is an advantage, that everything's kind of on the table and people are going in eyes wide open. But yeah, so I think customers for us they're worried about the state of their data in terms of will it be useful, and we're helping them with that, and we're saying let's get the data strategy right. And then they want you to know about, where's my data going to be, who's going to have access to it, and, are you going to try to commoditize it? And as I said earlier, customers' data is not our product, and it never will be, and that's not the way we see about it, we think about it. But I think everybody wants to have the conversation, and we'd encourage people to have the conversation, even if it's to figure out what you're not going to do, and maybe hone in on what you can do, or what might be the most advantageous for your company.
Yeah, I think it's a point well made about, people buying AI products almost from people they already work with and people they trust. I mean, that's a really good point. And also I agree completely that it's quite unusual that from day one the risk conversations we had about generative AI.
That's really powerful. I think everything on the table, and let's just be very transparent about and there's loads of good things. There's loads of my tasks in the house that I'd love someone else to do. Those repetitive tasks I'd love something else to do. There's loads of advantages, but let's be honest about the disadvantages and the challenges, and let's make sure we bake in the right controls to manage those.
Then I suppose I must ask you, IDEA are our partners on this podcast, and I must ask you, are there are there things that you do, every year with IDA that help you as regards kind of transformation, talent, development?
So I think they've been hugely supportive to us. I mean, they're constantly, talking to us about, Ireland as a place to do business, what challenges do we have? They're absolutely very happy to lobby and talk. They share information with us in terms of, they do a lot of surveying and whatever, and that information comes back. They're, with our colleagues in the US, they're very actively involved with them. Again, if we ever have, colleagues over here, they're very keen to meet them. Like, it's one thing, me telling everybody about Ireland Inc., but it can be really powerful, if IDA are telling them what's going on, whatever. So we find them like a super partner, and, and always at the end of the phone, always willing, to meet us or support us, whatever, so we really enjoy working with them, and they've been very, very good to us.
And then just coming back, I suppose, to Salesforce in Ireland, what do the next few years look like as far as you're concerned?
Well, very exciting, I hope. We are as I said, the sales hub for EMEA across ESMB. We've just recently launched a new graduate program. We'll have our first intake of graduates on the sales and solutions engineering side starting with us in September. We want to make that an annual program, so a great way to get real kind of talent in here. There will be future, roles in Dublin, but we've also, I suppose, a little bit of a, IDA role ourselves in pitching for business around, from the group, and so we've won a lot of business in terms of our training and development. So we had, in December this year, we had a load of high potential women from EMEA in Dublin for a really impactful training program. We have a global gender equality day that was hosted out of Dublin this year. We have a senior leader leading for impact that's been hosted out of Dublin this year. So we want to build, because we have auditoriums, we have training facilities, we have HANA floors, we've got an amazing city. People have an amazing time when they're here. So we want to kind of build on that and make Dublin the go-to hub, not just for EMEA, but like some of our colleagues on those senior programs came from the US and all around the world. So we think there's kind of huge opportunity, and we've a really high attendance in the office because there's a really good environment there. There's a really good culture. So we're getting really good feedback on that. And I think, people think that we can take the culture even on further from Ireland. We've got, next week, we're doing the largest volunteering event across Salesforce. We've got over 1,000 people registered. We're calling it Salesforce Thrive. They're hiking, walking, running, cycling, and we're all finishing off together. We're going to raise 250,000 for Special Olympics Ireland, for breakthrough cancer research, and from one of our local youth clubs in the area. And that'll be the biggest one that's ever happened in Salesforce. So I think we want to build on that kind of positive energy and momentum that we have there. And, and I mean, for me, I want Salesforce Ireland to be the best hub, of all the Salesforce hubs, with the best reputation, attracting all the best, international visitors, and winning, a lot of those opportunities as they come up.
Well, no better woman, and your enthusiasm is contagious. My goodness, that sounds very exciting. And thank you so much for coming in and being with us. It was an absolute joy to talk to you about the new role.
Lovely to see you again, and really nice to talk about the new role, and feel very well settled in. I'm glad you asked me now and not when I was 6 months in. It's nice to be here.
Well, thanks again.